This account is based on real events in 1281, the second wave of the Genko, meaning the Mongol invasions. The first assault in 1274 left scars across Kyushu. Villages around Hakata Bay, Kyushu's main northern harbor, counted burned boats and broken men. Riders brought reports to Dazaifu, the regional government center, that the Yuan dynasty, Kublai Khan's empire, had tested the shoreline and the spirit of the samurai, the warrior class. Arrows from composite bows struck armor at close range. Thunder-crack bombs burst with smoke and shards, frightful yet not unstoppable. Priests listed the fallen. Fishermen patched nets near Shikanoshima. The memory of drums across the surf stayed in men's ears. Hojo Tokumyun in Kamakura read the lessons. If ships reached flat beaches, riders died. So builders hauled stone to the waterline. A stone sea wall, shoreline defense of stacked rocks and mortar, rose along Hakata Bay's exposed curve. Crest blocks stood waist-high, set to break wave force and block landings. Behind them ran lanes for reserves and archers. Watch huts lifted above the tide line, their lanterns in the sea wind. Hammer blows echoed day and night. Children carried pebbles in baskets. Chains of beacons climbed ridges from Hakata to Dazaifu and inland posts. A single flame meant scouts, a ladder of flames meant fleets. Muster codes were hammered into wooden boards, east beaches to gather at dawn, west beaches by noon, reserve horse at evening. Warehouse clerks sealed rice jars with pine pitch. Saddle leather was rubbed with oil. The smell of brine and pitch marked a new line of defense. Men of Chikuzan and Buzan trained by the wall. Yards set target screens. Instructors drilled spear thrusts over stone, then bow shots under pressure. Kobaya, fast attack boats with light crews, practiced night paddling along the wall's shadow. Boatmen learned to run silent, then burst forward to throw grapnels. Fire arrows, shafts carrying small, wrapped charges, were tested against hull planks in the inlet. Chiefs timed turns with sand-filled gourds. The memory of 1274 drove a tighter order. Harbor captains mapped shoals. Monks catalogued shrines for refuge points. Magistrates wrote penalties for false alarms. Coastal families agreed to host scouts and stable horses. The wall buys time, an elder said at a council fire, but men win the morning. Then we will be there, answered a samurai named Adachi Moritsuna. At the stones. At first light. When spring wind crossed the bay, the wall gleamed wet, a new rib along Kyushu's chest, solid as a promise and heavy as a debt. The first invasion had tested courage. The second would test planning like a blade drawn against the grain. Kublai Khan ordered a renewed strike. The plan divided force and pathway. The eastern route army would sail from Korea, with Korean and Chinese fleets pressed into service and dockyards working under imperial quotas. The southern route army would depart from southern China, larger in number, heavy with transports and escorts. The aim was simple: converge near Kyushu and crush resistance along Hakata Bay, then demand submission in Kamakura's name. Imperial clerks recorded oars, mast poles, coils of rope, and iron fittings. Shipwrights in Goryeo and Jiangnan cut timber and steamed planks. Blacksmiths shaped anchors and spare nails. Bows, laminate and strong, stacked in crates with spare strings waxed against damp. Bombs, ceramic spheres packed with powder, stones, and metal bits, were sealed and slung in netted racks, described in ledgers as thunderpots. Supply depots rose on exposed piers with millet, rice, salted fish, vinegar, and water barrels. Drums thudded as crews learned signals. Korean captains charted the Tsushima Strait. Chinese pilots tracked monsoon winds on stitched weather charts. Scribes marked dates, early summer for favorable southwesterlies. Admirals set rendezvous milestones near Iki and the islets off Hakata. Patrol launches measured current lines with weighted cords. Messengers rode between moorings and city gates, their tablets stamped with the Yuan seal. In Japan, Scribes in Dazaifu copied all rumors. Monks tallied arrow stocks. Armories checked helmets and sleeve armor laces. The stone sea wall received repairs after storms. Yard foremen set new capstones and added steps for counterattacks. Kobaya crews trained to hook an anchor line, the rope holding enemy ships to seabed weights, and cut it clean. Stable masters watered horses at night to keep them fresh. At Kamakura, Hojo Tokumyun met counselors. He ordered prayers and kept taxes flowing to Kyushu. Scouts on Tsushima and Iki counted passing sails. Beacon chains ran drills under moonlight. The walls stood ready to force landings into narrow gates. "They will come heavier," said a coastal lord. "Then we bleed them at the stones." "Hold the coast," Tokumyun replied. "Break their joining. Make Kyushu a reef." The second plan gathered weight like thunder beyond the horizon, while the bay's tide kept its pulse. Men sharpened steel. Women sealed rations. The year 1281 approached with purpose and a map traced in risk. Tsushima saw the first sails. The Eastern Route Army from Korea crossed the strait and struck hard. Villages on Tsushima felt the crash of drums and the slap of oars. Small fortlets fired arrows, then fell. Couriers spurred south and east with dust on their sleeves. They carried names of captains, counts of hulls, and the color of banners. The smell of smoke mixed with sea salt. Iki Island faced the next blow. Crews landed, seized wells, and refilled water casks. Watchmen hid near shrines and signaled with polished mirrors toward Kyushu. A monk sketched the fleet on a wooden tablet, tall bowsprits, square sails, towers on decks. Prisoners spoke of a meeting with the Southern Route Army near Kyushu's north coast. The islanders burned spare stores so invaders could not take them. At Dazaifu, the governor's clerks sorted messages. They sent riders to Hakata Bay and to the lords of Chikuzen, Buzen, and Hizen. Muster notes specified beaches and hours. The stone sea wall became the line of appointment. Beacon chains flashed at twilight. Drums answered from hill to hill. Kyushu lords gathered men on the sands below the wall. Armor plates clicked as units formed. Bowyers set up repair tents. Boatmen checked grapnels and pitch pots for fire arrows. The Kobaya leaders briefed courses to Shikanoshima and the reefs near Nokonoshima. Lanterns flickered in the sea wind as captains studied the water. Nets of caltrops waited by narrow landings. "Hold here," said Adachi Moritsuna, pointing to a gap. "Let them press this channel. We strike from both flanks." A younger retainer asked, "And if they skirt the wall?" "Then the Kobaya bite," Adachi answered. "They will taste fire." On Iki's shore, the Eastern Route Army refilled and raised anchors. Weather looked fair. Officers read orders to push on, secure anchorages among the Hakata islets, and wait for the Southern Route Army. The sea breathed a steady swell. On Kyushu, men rolled spare stones to the wall's crest and settled behind the parapet. The duel of fleets moved closer by the hour, each tied a drumbeat. Summer heat glazed the water off Hakata Bay. Scouts from Iki reported masts on the horizon. The Eastern Route Army advanced and sent forward probes. War drums echoed across the surf. At the wall, archers braced and commanders held signals. The first landing craft pressed toward the stones near Susenji. Arrows flew. Shafts sparked off rock capstones. Shields thudded. Men ducked and rose, held by duty and the tight plan. Kobaya launched at dusk. Crews wore dark jackets and tied crests under helmets. They ran quiet along the wall's shadow, then turned seaward. Grapnels flew to railings. Fire arrows hissed and flared against deck planks. Some probes recoiled, sails trimmed to withdraw. Others tried the shallows near Shikanoshima, where channels twisted between rocks. There, the wall forced clumsy angles, and archers used the height. Prisoners taken in a moonlit scuffle said more ships sat beyond the outer islets, probing channels, measuring tide lines, and testing response time. Lantern signals ran from wall towers to hill beacons. Drums answered measured codes. Couriers rode to Dazaifu with counts of hulls and reports of bomb bursts. The ceramic cases popped and flashed, but the stones blunted. By midnight, raids deepened. Kobaya slipped through gaps, cut loose small transports, and towed them toward shore prizes. Sailors dragged captured men behind the wall, bound and quiet. Blacksmiths cooled blades in buckets. Pine pitch smoke clung to armor. One retainer sketched hull joints on a board to learn weak seams. Press the night, Adachi told the boat leaders. Cut their rest. We keep them nervous. A coxswain grinned. The wall is our shield. The oar is our spear. Before dawn, the bay settled. Probing ceased. The wall stood chipped but firm. The Japanese had shown a bite after dark and a hard surface by day. The enemy now searched for a better hold among the islets. The next phase would hinge on timing, maps, and the invisible clock of the monsoon. Delays crept into the grand plan. Weather charts showed shifting monsoon dates. Winds that should have favored steady approach faltered, then veered. The eastern route army anchored among scattered islets off Hakata, around Shiga, Noko, and Genkai's teeth. Captains argued over soundings. Deck scribes logged days lost to contrary breezes. At night, Japanese boats cut anchor lines. A sharp chisel and a steady hand sent ropes parting like wet hemp hair. Sudden gusts set freed ships drifting toward reefs. Kobaya teams used the moon's edge for cover and slipped away before patrol skiffs could respond. Lanterns bobbed on foreign decks, shouts crossed the water. Drums boomed counter-signals that sometimes tangled orders. Couriers from Iki reported shortages on the Eastern Fleet, water casks running down, fresh wood scarce, crews tired. The Southern Route Army, still days away, wrestled with its own winds along the coast of China. Pilots warned of a narrow window. If fleets failed to combine, the wall and the islands would keep slicing their efforts. On shore, Adachi shifted units along the wall. He moved archers to the east beach near Hakazaki and held reserves near the west flats. Blacksmiths reinforced grapnel hooks. Priests walked the parapet and chanted. Fishermen guided scouts through eddies. The smell of kelp mixed with pine pitch under a hot sky. Press them again, Adachi said. Anchor lines are their spine. We cut spines. A veteran nodded. We will save our blades for the landings that matter. Tension grew. The Eastern Fleet, frustrated, kept its position off the islets. Japanese raids mounted as practice sharpened skill. The calendar turned. Monsoon timing, once an ally on paper, grew uncertain in practice. The longer the stall, the more the wall and the night favored Kyushu. Sails rose from the southwest. The Southern Route Army from southern China appeared in belts of white canvas and dark hulls. Their arrival added weight and hope to the invaders. Admirals planned a join-up beyond Shikanoshima, then a push on Hakata Bay's open reaches. Supply boats moved forward with rice, water, and fodder. Yet the voyage had cost them. Stores ran thin after calms and detours near Hirado. Skirmishes sparked near Shikanoshima and Hirado's channels. Kobaya hit stragglers, burned small tenders with fire arrows, and vanished into chop. Shore archers used the wall's height to rake boats testing narrow entries. Drums pulsed in patterns known now to both sides. A few transports reached calmer water under escorts, then backed off when signals misfired. The attempt to combine force met current, reefs, and well-timed raids. Supply officers counted dwindling casks. Pilots warned about reefs near the islets and the pull of the tide. The great mass of the Southern Route Army could not anchor tight without fouling lines or grinding together. Patrol launches stretched thin. Night attacks continued. Grapnels clanged on rails, then slipped away. Some anchors held, others dragged. On land, Adachi shifted to the north face near the wall's strongest blocks. He posted fresh bowstrings and replaced broken knocks. Messengers rode to Dazaifu. The enemy was larger, but still divided. A council decided to hold the line, maintain raids, and deny any broad landing. They are many, a young captain said, watching the horizon. Adachi kept his eyes on the tide. Many ships need many answers. We give them current, stone, and hunger. As days passed, the fleets moved like heavy machines grinding against a shaped shore. Plans to combine met the granular truth of reefs, wind, and men in boats with knives for ropes. The duel hardened. The sky began to change. Barometers were unknown, yet every sailor felt the drop. Air pressed on ears. Jade-green swells thickened and rose under a leaden sky. Wind shifted with a damp edge from the southeast. Pilots from both fleets eyed cloud bands that stacked like shutters. Shrines along the coast filled with prayers. Monks beat drums while fishermen knelt with folded hands. Commanders met aboard flagships and near-shore pavilions. Some urged a hard press at first light to force a landing before seas worsened. Others argued for shelter behind islets, clustered in tight groups with doubled anchors. Weather charts, stitched from experience, did not agree. The calendar gave no mercy. Supplies thinned. Crews tired. On the wall, Adachi ordered spare stones placed for emergency gaps. Runners checked beacon towers. Kobayashi coxswains studied lee shores and mapped drift lines in case of sudden squalls. Pine pitch fumes hung in the air below the parapet. Horses stamped behind dunes. The bay felt expectant, like a held breath before a shout. Shikanoshima's coves took on a strange color at dusk. Birds flew low. Ropes creaked under strain though wind stayed modest. A messenger from Hirado reported broken chop with sharp, short waves. The southern fleet shifted position to ride it out near reefs that promised some cover. The eastern fleet closed ranks near Nokonoshima. "Do we strike tonight?" a retainer asked, glancing at the dark water. "Not now," Adachi said. "The sea will strike for us. We must be ready to help it." Shrines burned offerings along the coast. Priests raised sutras. Lanterns flickered in the sea wind. The smell of brine cut through the smoke. The duel of fleets paused on a rim of weather. The next hours would choose between press and shelter, between bold landings and broken anchors. The typhoon, a tropical storm of violent, circling wind, came like a door slammed by the sky. Gusts rose in steps, then roared. Rain needled sideways. Anchors dragged. Lines sang and then snapped. Ships swung on arcs and collided. Hulls struck reefs with dull, final sounds. Lanterns vanished in wet darkness. Drums went silent under the wind. Off Shikanoshima, clusters of transports tried to hold with doubled anchors. Some anchors found poor grip in weedy bottom. Others tore free when angles shifted. Masts went by the board. Deck towers cracked. Crews fought to cut fouled lines while waves lifted and dropped hulls. The wall's parapets took spray. Men crouched under shields and waited. Near Nokonoshima, the eastern fleet suffered crowded moorings. A freed hull drove into another, splintering rails. Boats rolled and swamped. Fire arrows were useless in the downpour. The sea took command. Through bursts of rain, shore lookouts saw silhouettes shatter on reefs that had guarded Hakata since old time. Japanese shore parties braved the edge. Ropes were paid out from the wall steps. Kobayashi hugged the lee of rocks and reached men who washed near the stones. Some sailors were pulled ashore, bound for holding pens. Others slipped away into the dark. The storm drowned signals, erased plans, and turned numbers into scattered survivors. "Hold fast to the rescue lines," Adachi shouted at the steps. "Save who you can. Watch for driftwood and spars." A coxswain yelled back, the reef is full of wreckage. We will steer by the wall. All night, the wind roared. Ropes creaked under strain. The smell of broken pine and wet pitch filled the air. When masts broke, they went with a snap like bones in a tree. The sea wall held. The fleets did not. The storm chose the coast. Morning showed a bay strewn with wrecks. Sunlight edged through ragged cloud and found hull pieces on reefs and beaches. Survivors clung to planks near Shikanoshima and along the flats west of Hakata. Japanese detachments moved fast. Kobayashi ferried teams to islets and secured small groups of sailors. Shore patrols captured men who reached coves and sought water. Signals rose from the beacon towers with counts and positions. The Zaifu received the news. Messengers rode with names and numbers. The governor ordered supplies to rescue camps and guards to holding pens. Priests walked the beaches and offered prayers. Blacksmiths repaired blades nicked by driftwood. The air smelled of brine and tar. Drums sounded measured, steady beats to guide boats through tangled debris. Adachi sent sorties to Iki and the channels near Hirado. They found more wreckage and scattered crews. Orders were clear: secure islands, prevent regrouping, and keep the wall manned until certainty returned. The Southern Route Army, once heavy with ships, lay broken into pieces along the coastline. The Eastern Fleet, already strained, had lost anchors, masts, and the will to attempt any broad landing. "Spare water for the prisoners," Adachi told a sergeant. "We will question them this evening." The sergeant saluted. "We will keep them under shelter and watch." By sunset, beacon chains flashed victory signals. Couriers galloped toward Kamakura with reports of the storm and the defense at the wall. The sea had smashed the fleets, but planning had set the terms: a forced anchorage near reefs, night raids on anchor lines, and a coastal system ready to move with speed. The duel of fleets had ended with wrecks and rescues, not with a breach of stone. Word traveled across provinces. People began to call the storm "Kamikaze," meaning divine wind, because many believed heaven had guarded the coast. The name took root as tales reached markets and temples. Yet officials knew the wind carried costs. The Hojo regime in Kamakura faced heavy accounts: wall building, rice levies, weapon maintenance, horse feed, and unpaid rewards promised to men who stood nights on stone and paddled Kobayashi into danger. Disputes over stipend strained ties with Kyushu lords. The victory saved the islands but bent the ledger. Hakata Bay kept its wall as a lesson. Engineers walked the parapet and marked where stones shifted under waves. They learned to build higher on points, to leave steps for counterattacks, and to plan beacon chains with better overlap. Harbor captains refined maps of Shikanoshima, Nokonoshima, and Hirado's channels. Boat schools taught cutting of anchor lines as a measured skill. Weather watchers began noting pressure signs, cloud stacks, and strange swells. Monks recorded names of those lost and those who pulled others from the surf. The story of 1281 became a guide to coastal defense: hold stone, split fleets, strike ropes, and trust the sea when it turns. Markets returned. Children played by the parapet. Lanterns flickered in the sea wind, now friendly. The smell of brine and pine pitch remained, a memory stitched into the shore. Adachi Moritsuna rode the beach at dusk. He watched swells slide along the wall. A young retainer walked beside him. "We built the wall," the retainer said. "But the storm carried the heaviest load." Adachi nodded. "We built so the storm could finish. Remember both." Kamikaze, the storm that saved Japan, 1281, stands as a fact-based tale of fleets, sea walls, and timing. Thank you for watching. For more stories like this, please subscribe.